welcome to the February CIC meeting. Dennis, would you call the roll?
Sure. Kanima, Linda, I think you're here. Dennis is here. Caulfield, we have Lisa out there. Looks quite comfortable. Elyville, we have Dee Dee on Zoom, I believe. Dee Dee?
She is on early.
There I am. Okay.
Oh, hello. Carla Laws is...
I'm here.
Okay, good. Gaffney Lane, we have a new person, Dwayne Hanson. Yes. Hello. Welcome. We have failed to mention Chris out in the audience from Hazel Grove, but I think in due time he'll be up here, right? Is that the hope? Anyway, I wanted to acknowledge him because we've been missing him for the last 3 or 4 months. Hillendale, we have Sarah.
Here.
We have Josh.
I'm here.
McLaughlin, we have Denise.
I'm here.
Good. And we have Tim to my right.
I'm here.
Park Place, I believe Steve is absent, and we have Bob here. And I don't think we have anybody for Rivercrest.
No.
Could I be mistaken? Tower Vista or Two Rivers? Hannah's here and Adam is here, present. Thank you. Who? Ben?
Betty.
Betty. Oh, Betty, excuse me. Well,
She was
I think she was
joining
I
online,
didn't see her.
but she is not feeling very well. Yeah, she was going to try and join over Zoom, but then she logged off because she's not
Excuse me
feeling
for
too
that. I did see her name and then I didn't see it.
great. So she's excused absence, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have our first presentation tonight from Juliana Allen. I believe you're on, Zoom.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I have not presented on Zoom in so long, it feels a little bit weird, I'm not gonna lie. So, hi. For those that don't know me, my name is Juliana Allen. I am the Executive Director at Downtown Oregon City Association. And I'm super happy to be here and be giving you all an update on what we've been up to in the district, the plans for 25, and answer any questions you all might have. So, long story short, we have been very busy planning our event season for the year. As most of you probably know, we do a few, we partner with the city on a handful of events. So we've got the first city celebration coming up in July. Sorry about that. Okay, for city celebration in July, we have a few wine walks that we are doing. And of course, we've got the trick or treat event and the holiday tree lighting. All of those have been planned, the dates have been set, and something new that we are doing this year is called a Last Thursday. So our goal of the Downtown Oregon City Association is to build community and cultivate commerce in the district. So at the beginning of the year, it's really a good chance for us as an organization to look at, okay, what did we do last year? What is our mission? What is our vision? How can we fill in those gaps, right? How can we continue to move forward on the things that we want to do? So one of the pieces that we really wanted to highlight this year is really some more activations for our retailers. A lot of my job is spent talking to business owners and talking to the community about what people want to see in the district. And one thing we heard numerous times was that a lot of your retailers close really early. Most close around 4. And if people are coming after work on the weekday, they typically cannot get there by 4 p.m. So we organized a Last Thursday. Unfortunately, our first one was this last Thursday, and downtown had a little fire at the Tumwata Village site. So I can't say the first one was a huge success, but we had probably, I think it was about 15 retailers that were signed up to be in it, and our goal is that it just continues to grow on itself. So they're booked out through the year. So how it works is any retailer can participate in it, and they just extend their hours. We put them on our website, and if they have a promotion, it's even better. We're encouraging people to have promotions. And I do have to say, even though this last Thursday wasn't ideal, we did have a handful of businesses send us an email, send us a message that just said, hey, we ended up just staying open anyways, and we did X amount more that day because of it. So again, it wasn't the kickoff that we were hoping for, but all in all, it was a success for what it could be. So I'm happy about that. And everything else in the district is just kind of cooking along. We're continuing to have our eyes very closely on the courthouse. Looking forward to seeing what happens there, as I'm sure all of us are. And yeah, that's kind of what's going on. First wine walk, I have not announced it yet, but we are doing a spring, summer, and fall wine walk. So the first one will be March 20th. So if you have not been to those yet, I highly recommend it. They are very fun, and a great chance to visit the businesses that have not. Maybe you haven't had a chance to visit yet. And I do want to also give a shout out to just the businesses in our district. We had one open Watershed Cafe. It's in the building where Winehards used to be, and they are a cafe bistro, so they specialize in breakfast and lunch. And the last 2 weekends I was down there, they had lines out the door waiting to get in on both Saturday and Sunday, and it just makes me really happy to see. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And now I would love to hear if anyone has any questions for me that I am happy to answer to the best of my ability. And I can't see anyone. Oh, there you all are. Thanks.
Bob?
Has there been any discussion about eliminating the parking meters downtown?
Not per se. What I will say, though, is we are going to advocate for a parking study after the courthouse moves out, because, it will change. The courthouse brings a lot of people in every day, so why I don't see eliminating the parking meters as something that's likely to happen. I am hopeful that there will be another parking study done, and hopefully some steps can be taken after that. Just we don't know what the impact of the courthouse moving out is going to be yet, so I think it's imperative that we advocate for a parking study after they move out.
Any other questions? Anybody online?
Come to last Thursday, anybody? I guess the last one wasn't great, so I hope you guys come to last Thursday next
Thursday.
Okay. We will, and we're looking forward to your first wine walk.
Yes.
I'm trying to raise my hand, but I don't know how to do it.
Okay, well, that also helps. Go ahead, Dee Dee.
Oh, thank you, sorry. I didn't realize I was unmuted. I loved last Thursday. I used to travel to Northeast Portland, Alberta, to do their last Thursday. I also did downtown's first Thursdays religiously. I travel up and down the Oregon coast, and I usually always during the summer try to land in Eureka on Fridays, because they bring out live music every Friday night. And that, you might add that. You can have a band at the north and south end of downtown.
Absolutely. That is.
And you have bars that both handle music. So that was just a thought, because those are the kind of things that, where most of them had galleries to bring them in, and restaurants. We have more restaurants and bars than anything. So music might be a help.
Absolutely.
And maybe closing down some of the side streets so people can walk along and just, anyway, Great, those are my suggestions, right, thanks.
Sorry, my face. Closing, I am not a fan of closing down the streets. I will say that. But I will also say that when the weather gets nicer, we absolutely are planning on doing more things like music and other things we can do outside. Not many people are super excited about standing outside in January or February, I guess we're in now. So, but yes, those are wonderful ideas, and I'm happy to hear that that you do those in other parts of So that's awesome. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Denise is, yeah.
Denise, okay.
How late are the extended hours?
Until 6 p.m.
Okay.
Anyone else with a question?
I didn't get the name of that new cafe bistro. What was that?
Watershed Cafe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And our next presenter is going to be Aquilla, Climate Friendly Communications, Amendments to the Flood Management Overlay.
We're starting off with climate friendly, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Climate, okay.
Let me share. All right. Okay, good evening. So maybe my presentation will be as exciting as the last one. It's had mixed results so far. So I've got two completely separate items to talk to you about. And the first one is climate-friendly and equitable communities, which we call CFEC. So if you hear me saying CFEC, that's what it means. It's a program that came out of the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So,
Could I ask a question first?
sure.
Is any of this stuff that you're covering, should I excuse myself?
Good question. No, and I'm sorry, Commissioner LaSalle, you're going to hear this twice.
Okay.
Probably 3 times, maybe 4. It's time for all done, but no, this is, thank you for asking. It will be a legislative item, so you can hear this as many times as it comes before you.
Thank you.
Okay, so right now we're in the public engagement phase of this, and eventually it will become a legislative item. But so the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities is a program that the Department of Land Conservation and Development is trying to implement with Oregon cities and counties. It came about because in 2007, the state legislature adopted a goal to reduce climate pollution by 75% by 2050. And then in 2022, realized, or they saw that that the state is off track from meeting the goal. So at that point in time, Governor Kate Brown put out basically an executive order that all of her agencies found ways to do what they could within their purview to help reach the goal. And so there's a lot of acronyms here, but LCDC, the Land Conservation of Development Commission, they directed their agency to adopt some changes in planning, mostly in the state's most populated areas. So it includes us, and it really, I think it applies. I'm not sure the cutoff, but for sure the metro cities are part of this program. So tonight I'm just going to kind of bring you some updates from this program and some of the code that we will be looking at, and just looking to get any initial feedback, and then I'll talk about the timelines. There's no decision yet, though. Okay, so under CFAC, under these new administrative rules, that Oregon cities required to adopt several measures to reduce overbuilding of parking and the climate impacts from new and redeveloped parking areas. The way that the state set this up, we have three choices to make, or we can choose from one of these three options. Either we remove parking minimums citywide and just kind of be done with it, or we pick from a menu of policy reforms. And then the third option was more prescriptive changes. Some of them relatively minor. Some of the things we already comply with, some of our code already complies with the requests that they're making. We may just have to make some minor changes. The parking minimums already don't apply in the climate-friendly areas. So that, for us as our regional center, that's a term from Metro. It's basically our downtown area. And then we can't apply minimums within half a mile of the frequent transit. So some of the other things that we'll be looking at are parking area design reforms, increasing the amount of electric vehicle parking requirements. We have to put some parameters around parking maximums, and then we have to look at bike parking as well. So this is a map of the areas where there's no minimums at all. And this is showing the frequent transit line. TriMet is talking about moving it, and so this is the proposed line. Right now, it basically is following 99, and then it somehow makes its way to Lynn, and I'm honestly not sure how it gets to Lynn, but it comes up Lynn, goes past the Red Soils campus, and then ends up at the community college. So the slight change here is that it will move, the frequent transit will move over to Molalla. So what you're looking at is the area, half mile on either side, where no minimum parking is, we cannot require any minimum parking within that half mile area. A developer can build it. We're not prohibiting it, but we can't require it. So, okay, so what our preferred compliance route. So we took this to the City Commission February of last year to kind of get the preferred compliance route. And the direction that we got was to go with option 3. And so option 3 is, like I just talked about, no minimums within half mile of this frequent transit corridor in the regional center. There's certain uses that we also can't require parking minimums for. No additional parking for changes in use and expansion, and then paid parking district in a residential permit area. So we comply with that. We comply with that through those parking meters. So if the parking meters go away in downtown, then we may have to come up with another way that we comply with this paid parking district. Okay, so this is, we have a grant through DLCD, and that grant has paid for a consultant. And so our consultant has helped us streamline this a bit. So it's actually pretty amazing. So these boxes have the highlights of what's required. And if you go to the OAR, it's just lots of text. So he's done a good job of kind of winnowing it down of what are the important pieces here. So right now what we're looking at are some of the required changes. As I mentioned before, a lot of this is very prescriptive. We don't have a lot of leeway. We don't have a lot of room to make some changes. So this first box is that given the option that we chose, there's certain types of developments that we can't require parking for. And so there are these smaller residential units, mixed-use developments, schools and childcare facilities, bars and taverns, historic buildings, small commercial projects, development seeking lead, LEED certification, and then there's some parking maximums that we have to look at within the regional center and half mile of the frequent transit corridor. One of the other requirements with these minimums is that the parking mandates have to be reduced. We have to offer reductions when a developer proposes solar or wind power, or they have dedicated car sharing spaces or EV charging or additional accessible units. So there's a ratio that's been laid out in the administrative rules that says, I can't remember what the ratios are, but it's basically like if they have so much solar or wind power, then that offsets the parking requirement by a certain amount. Okay, so those are the minimums. The design changes really have to do with these large parking lots that are over half an acre. So we're looking at requiring new parking areas that are more than half an acre, have to provide trees and pedestrian connections. We're looking at needing to provide carpool and van pool spaces, which I think might already be a requirement. A lot of cities in the metro region were already required to do that. We have to allow some redevelopment of the parking areas for bike or transit uses. We encourage, or we need to find ways to encourage redevelopment of underused parking and then facilitate shared parking. So right now we allow it. So shared parking is, the best example I can come up with is there's a little tavern right next to OC Brewing, Coney Island, and they needed more parking, and they have like maybe 2 spaces in front of their restaurant. And so they worked with like the engineering firm or a firm that's right next to them who closes, you know, they've got their hours offset. So they have a shared parking agreement, and we allow it, but they had to go through quite a few hoops to show us how that was going to work. And so what this code will require us to do is reduce some of those barriers a little bit. And then new parking lots that are over half an acre have to provide 40% tree canopy and or solar and or fee in lieu. And so right now we already have landscaping requirements. So that's one of the things where we just need to make small changes to make sure that we're meeting that code. And then the bike parking kind of increases where we'll have to find ways to provide bike parking in the regional center, which means the city provides it, not, usually we would require a developer on their private property to provide a certain number of bike parking. And in this case, we'll be putting up, bike racks in places. And I think that our public works group is already working on that a little bit. So we're looking at that. And then bike parking on private property has to be lit, allow for these cargo bikes and lockable storage, increase the number of bicycle spaces in multi-unit buildings, and then require bike parking for other uses, which we already meet that requirement. So some of these bike parking ones, I think we just have kind of small adjustments to make. Okay, and then this next section is where we can make some choices. And I should mention too that Dee Dee and I think Carla as well were part of our climate-friendly Equitable Communities like ad hoc advisory group. So they've seen this presentation as well and given some feedback already. So one of the areas is that the underused on and off-street parking we have to allow them to redevelop for other purposes. So that's bike parking, bus stops, park and rides, parklets, which we already have a program for parklets. When I say parklets, does everyone know what that means? That's, you saw a lot more kind of in the height of the pandemic, all these outside places to sit that were in the street, or they're really where you used to be able to park your car, and now there's like some, tables and chairs. And so On private property, restaurants and retailers, they can do that already. And then Public Works has a program to allow that. It's not like in a code anywhere, but they have a policy that basically allows for some right-of-way to be used for that. Let's see. Okay, so with this piece, underused doesn't have a definition yet. I guess it's up to the property owner. So we may want to put some parameters around what underused means. We will need to make sure that there are ADA spaces and emergency vehicle access. That has to be maintained. So one of these questions we're looking at is how can the code be structured to meet this requirement, and what land uses do we want to allow in however we end up defining underused. The next piece on here is we have to allow one of 3 climate mitigation actions for parking lots that are over half an acre. So that's either installation of solar panels with generation capacity, the tree canopy requirement, or a fee in lieu. The tree canopy is really the easiest to implement because we already have that code basically there. The question that we're looking at is if a fee in lieu should be included as an option, and what should the level be. The feedback that we got from the CFEC advisory group was to not make fee in lieu an option at all, and really encourage the other two, one of these more kind of more climate-friendly options, solar panels or tree canopy. We got, I would say, I think this is a correct characterization, but kind of mixed feedback from the Planning Commission. There were some commissioners who felt like there shouldn't be a fee in lieu, some who felt like there should, or maybe if we have it, it should be fairly high, so it's an option, but discourages that fee in lieu. So that's one of the areas where we've got some flexibility.
Do you want to take any questions now or wait until the end of the presentation? We can wait till.
Can we? Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
It's okay. Let's see. Okay, where was I? Is there? Oh, there we go. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, that happens to us too. Okay. So another area where we can get some feedback. So the code, the administrative rule is going to require that we require 40% of new parking spaces have electric vehicle, have the conduit available for the charging station. Not that we will not have to require the installation of the station itself, but we have to require that there's conduit laid so that somebody else could put that station, charging station in. Right now, there's already a rule that I think requires 20% of the spaces to have that. And so this will kick it up for these multi-unit developments to 40%. And then the question becomes, do we want to require more? Do we want to, just kind of how do we structure this so that we maintain accessibility, that we, keep walkways clear, and I think those are kind of some of the main questions on that one. The next piece, so we have to provide these small-scale mobility device parking in climate-friendly areas at key destinations. So there's a lot of terms in there. So small-scale mobility is bicycles, e-bikes, scooters, mopeds. The climate-friendly area, like I described earlier, is basically our downtown. And then the key destination part, I don't remember. I will have to look in the OAR to see exactly what they mean by key destination, but it is defined. And so then our question there is, how best do we want to accommodate that? Do we want to cover it? Do we want to have it covered? There's, some opportunity to align this with ongoing parking management, and how do we want to accomplish this? So there's a little bit of choices to make with that one. And then the last item here is that, so cities over 25,000 in population within the metro area, this one we already comply with, I believe. Let's see, adopt parking maximums in climate-friendly areas and within half a mile of frequent transit. So we don't quite comply with that, but we do have parking maximums. They might be, I think they're higher than what is in the OAR, so we have to go back and kind of readjust those. And then the question here became, let's see if I can get this, I want to make sure I explain this correctly. So if we have a lower maximum within that half-mile buffer than outside of the half-mile buffer, do we want to just make it the same across the city? Or is it going to be different? Do you have more opportunities, I guess, for more parking depending on where you are in the city? So that's kind of the question there.
You mean relax mandatory minimums that are in place now?
No, it actually would apply to maximums. So within the half-mile corridor, we will only be able to impose this 1.2 spaces per studio unit or 2 spaces per other units for multifamily. And that's a little bit lower than what we already have as our maximum. And so if you're the apartments across from the high school on Beaver Creek, they would have had to comply with 2.5 spaces. They wouldn't be able to get more than that. And so do we want to lower it across the city so that all maximums are the same? Or do we want to have, one set of maximums within the half-mile buffer and a different set of maximums outside of it? Does that make a little more sense, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I'm just concerned it's leaning toward what they were doing in Southeast Portland with infill, and, it's not, they would put, 200 units in parking in a tight neighborhood with no parking spots and say, well, these are going to be bike riders, which isn't really practical because, you can't take a sick parent to the doctor on a bike or whatever, and I just, I'm leery of that. I know it doesn't pencil out as a developer to put in, parking spots when you can sell space, that generates revenue, but I'm just trying to think about longevity for the city moving forward. People need a place to park their cars.
Right, and so the situation you're describing, we cannot impose any minimums in that half-mile buffer. So there could be these infill projects without any parking if a developer chose not to construct it. Okay, well, that's the good news. That's not the good news, but that's where we're at. So the timeline has been, we did some initial code audit work, and we had a couple of meetings with our CFEC advisory committee, October, November. We got some good feedback from them, and now we're doing the kind of broader outreach. We have a open house next Monday, February 10th, in the lobby of the Libkey Public Safety Building from 6 to 7. And then we're going to put all of the open house materials online with an opportunity for answering questions. And then we intend to take this through the formal adoption process, kind of March through May. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or feedback, and then
I think
bring you more good news.
Dee Dee had a question online.
Okay. Dee Dee, do you want to ask your question? Unmute yourself, or do you?
Yes, I did unmute myself.
Yay.
And Aquilla,
Yes.
thank you very much for bringing up that there was a strong opposition to fee and lieu. Because the presenter, the person who was taking all of our comments, really washed over that. And you brought it up when he was bringing it up to the commission. So I really thank you very much, because there was really, once it was brought up, and I think it was Sam and I, and then there were several people that chimed in after that, that fee and lieu should be taken off the board. If you're going to have to leave it, $1,500 is not enough. If you think about building on that piece of property and everything else, then you're looking at a footprint of more like $15,000. Who would not pay fee and lieu in order for that? Developer doesn't care, really. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I wish you'd make it stronger in your presentations going forward, because the other alternatives, doing electric and solar in parking spaces or parklet areas, my feeling for if you're going to encourage people to start bringing their families down, and we have a lot of people who bike here with alternative transportation as their only means of transportation, and or whether you're choosing to prefer locally, they should get premium parking. Maybe give them the parklet spots, or or even if you're going to take up a couple of parking places for that, cover it so they can load their groceries, they can load their children onto their bicycles. So anyway, I really appreciate your efforts at this. 2 thumbs down for fee and lieu. And I know there's more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bob, you had a question?
Yes, will all these regulations apply to the mill site once that's developed?
Yes.
And also there, in the past, has been at least one problem with maximum parking spots that were difficult for a business to comply with. In other words, they wanted more than the maximum, but the code wouldn't allow any wiggle room. And I would encourage some kind of follow-up on allowing a little wiggle room for either minimums or maximums if a good enough argument is posed to allow that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you're probably remembering when the Planning Commission had a variance application. Actually, I don't remember if it was a variance or a parking adjustment, but it is basically a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission to ask for more parking than what the code allows. And that was for a bank. And I don't actually know if that's something that we'll be able to continue or not. I'll have to look. I'll have to look
The
into
one
it.
I was referring to was Milner's Veterinary Hospital.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that one, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim?
Well, so maybe you can confirm for me, when we talked about this, you said climate-friendly and equitable communities, right? So are we talking about downtown and the transit line only, or are you talking about citywide on this whole project?
It's citywide, but that map I showed you is where, I guess you could say we have kind of fewer options. We can't, actually, let me go back to the map. And, can you?
Maybe, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so if you can see, I'm sorry for the folks, well, nobody can really see it but me.
Yeah.
So there's a faint gray line, and that's a half-mile buffer. And so in that buffer area, we cannot require any minimum parking. Outside of that buffer area, we can require minimum parking, but we have some constraints on for example, some of the uses that we can require it on.
Right, and that's basically my entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the questions that I have is, I mean, we already have a parking problem downtown, and I get it, when this county moves out, that may alleviate a lot of that. But with new construction coming into the city, new development, number one, to not have to provide parking if they choose to do so, plus the tree canopy, plus the 40% electric. I mean, you're really not going to have any parking. It's bad enough as it is in my neighborhood. It's a street parking. We have no street parking. I mean, it's an old neighborhood, no driveways, very few driveways. And, you go over there during the day, and you very find it, unless you're in a permit area, you can't find parking. So this would just exacerbate that to the point it would just cause incredible frustration. And my question would be this, is there a way, we can't force them to do minimums, but can you incentivize them?
I don't know.
And would incentivize count? Because the thing, years and years ago, we incentivized developers to not have snout-faced homes if they would put it back behind the front facade, or garages behind the front facade, and put a porch on it. There were ways that we could incentivize them. And it just seems to me that'd be something to think about, especially in this area.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. I haven't heard of incentivizing a minimum amount of parking.
Well, if you're not demanding it, but incentivizing it, does that meet the rule of the code? And that's the question. And that was the discussion we had many years ago when we talked about this the last time. Just something to think about, because I think it's going to have a huge, huge impact to our neighborhood.
Do you have thoughts about what those incentives might be?
Perhaps a discounted SDC, perhaps, maybe we give them, it could be one of many different things. I could look back at my notes from back then and some of the things that we did incentivize them with, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And Denise Beasley, I see your hand raised.
Hi there. I was talking about this program with my family, and the question arose, when will they be able to put charging stations for e-bikes on the downtown area? Is that a possibility?
Maybe that's one of our incentives. I don't know why not, and I also don't necessarily think that would have to be even connected with this program, but if we could look at charging stations for e-bikes, thank you for that.
And then the other question was, they're going to be decreasing parking, it sounds like. Will we be able to increase our public transportation? Because that has to go along with it. That was a concern from one of our neighbors.
I don't have an answer for that, but that's a good comment.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I guess the only thing I can answer is that I haven't heard that the frequency of transit or the number of bus routes is going to increase.
Josh?
If there was a fee in lieu that was being done, what would those funds even be used for? How would that offset anything?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's part of the conversation we had and kind of the debate that came up. It can't be used for just anything. So the way that the administrative rule is written, it has to actually go into, I think they were calling it like an energy fund, and it's either one that exists through the county or the state, or we create it. So it's not like we would be able to gather that fee in lieu and plant more trees, because it has some very specifics for how it can be used. And so that was part of the conversation from that CFEC advisory group as well. Then why would we, want this fee in lieu if it almost causes more issues? We have a completely different tree program where we have a fee in lieu for street trees. And so, and that's different, right? That's if you take out a tree and you can't replace it for any number of reasons, we collect the fee, and then we use that for our contract with Friends of Trees, who goes out and plants more trees. So it kind of, is a cycle, but in this case, it would be a little bit different.
Sure. And then I was going to ask, do you happen to know, does the new courthouse area meet any of these requirements as a new build? I mean, I know obviously it's not in our code yet, but do you know if they are meeting a 40% covered tree canopy in their parking area?
I don't think so. I don't think we have 40%. I know they had to do a landscape plan, and they would have had to plant a certain number of trees, but it may not have equaled that 40% tree canopy coverage.
Sure. I'm just thinking that 40% coverage of a parking area would pretty much be about everywhere other than the main strips through, it seems like to me. So I get that it's an Oregon State thing that they decided to do, but it doesn't seem like it's making it easier on anybody as they said they were doing.
Yeah, so with that tree canopy coverage, I think that part of the reasoning behind it is, when we had that heat dome a few years back, they found these heat islands, right, where there weren't very many trees, and so it was just a lot hotter in those areas, and people were experiencing it differently. So, and parking lots are just often these vast areas of asphalt, concrete, whatever it may be. And so is there a way to kind of decrease that heat island effect?
Yeah, I mean, definitely having trees makes it a lot cooler. That is definitely for sure. I don't know, the 40% number seems interesting, that 40%, conduit for EV charging, 40% canopy. I'm just kind of curious how they even came up with that number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't a question for you. So.
Adam, you had a question?
If there's one more, I can wait until the end.
I think Dee Dee.
Oh. I think Dee Dee's already asked. Maybe her thing's on there. Okay. I have a question. There was a study done a long time ago that I recall that every parking spot was worth X amount of dollars for shopping. Now, I would like to know if any such study has been updated, and if so, bikes, what dollar amounts do bikes bring for parking spots? So I just remember that the Oregon City Shopping Center, I was working there, had a pop-up store that I managed a long time ago, and I was told the dollar amount for every parking spot that Oregon City Shopping Center had for Christmas time. And that was why they liked the big parking, because I just wondered if that was any study that's been done or updated, or if you have any of that information.
So are you asking the cost of a parking stall?
No, what the parking spot brings in. Right. So every parking spot in front of Rite Aid is worth X amount of dollars to them every day in revenue that they have. And I wondered if there's a breakdown for bikes and what that dollar amount is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
If we want to encourage downtown, it'd be important to have parking.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think that's probably on the private developers' kind of return on investment side to see, if we have this many parking stalls, that means we're going to have this many customers and so forth. But I do know they cost a lot to make a parking stall. I don't know what that number is right now off the top of my head, but yeah, sorry.
there anyone else with another question?
I do.
Okay. I didn't see her.
Is that,
Dee Dee again? Okay, Dee Dee.
yeah, sorry. The 40% tree canopy is calculated on a mature tree. So you may put in a small tree when you're first getting your parking, but you're calculating it as a mature tree. So let's use an oak, for example, my favorite tree. If you were to take up one parking place for, in a parking lot, to plant an oak tree that would grow to mature state, it's not going to grow to mature state for 150 years. So the 40% tree canopy is not really unreasonable if you think about it as a long-term investment on canopy. And still, a person saying, oh, but leaves, and depending on the tree, it's just not going to do that much. But the more mature trees we have in our city, the better we off for all of us. So I have no problem with the 40% tree. You don't lose that much space when you're talking about a mature canopy. One red oak can cover at maturity at 85 years, 80 feet one direction, 80 feet in the next direction. That's a third of the parking lot of the church right down the street. So really, the planting of the trees at maturity is really not an unreasonable request. They just need to make sure they have the space so they don't say, remove the tree because it's uplifting the concrete or uplifting the tarmac. We also might think about impervious parking places, an incentive for impervious surfaces, so the water will drain through the parking structures to our groundwater and help purify water. That's something I think should be considered also. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
You have a comment?
Did you have a question now?
I would be happy to provide some
Okay.
context from the
Okay.
commission perspective if
Okay.
you were, and do I speak into this one? Yeah. Okay.
The other one's broken.
So when these rules were first handed down, we decided as a commission to join a lawsuit challenging these rules. We joined about a dozen other cities from across the state that were being led by, I think, the city of Springfield, who were challenging these, not because we necessarily disagree with having climate-friendly and equitable communities. If you name something like that, it's hard to be against that. But more or less, regardless of policy, the fact of how this came about through an executive order. This did not go through the lawmaking process through our legislature. This is something that the governor said is going to happen, and it happened. And we did not feel that that took into account the intricacies of what individual cities across this state need and what they want. They probably weren't considering that some cities like Oregon City are literally on a cliff. And so when you mandate certain transportation things, they don't work out as well here as they might in the central city of Portland. So obviously we were not successful with that, and so that's why we're in this position today. But to a few things that I heard, one about incentives, which I love that idea, Tim. I think for up until now, our hope has been that the main incentive will be simply that the market will still dictate that a desirable place to live will include a place where you can park your car, because that's what 95% of our residents have. I know that there are arguments being made that this isn't only for environmental reasons, but for housing affordability reasons, and it was brought up that it allows them to build denser on more land, but the other consideration still exists that if there's a unit that's more affordable, but you have a car that you need to park to take to work so that you can pay your rent, and it's not there, that makes it difficult for it to be affordable. And so we have, on the incentives, I'm really glad you brought that up, and we'll definitely be looking into that. But my hope is that regardless of anything, that the market will still dictate a need for that. The second part was a question about increased public transit. So this does not dictate more more public transit. It simply says where there are frequent lines that you have to use those boundaries that Aquilla just talked about. So the frequency of transit lines is all up to TriMet, and they have not indicated that they are looking at expanding. And so we pretty much have that line in the middle on that slide right there that we'll have to follow, but that's not going to include more frequent transit unless TriMet decides to do so. So I just wanted to add a few things there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next.
On to the next. Moving on.
This next one's not really any better. Yeah. Just
Sorry, let me just share.
got lots of great mandates to share with you. So this next one's a little interesting. So we're in the process of making some minor changes to our floodplain management overlay district. And let's see. I'm going to actually kind of go through this a little bit quickly. But so this is a map of our floodplain. This is showing the 100-year floodplain and the 1996 flood inundation. And so right now we regulate that. We regulate what kind of development can happen in there. And because of the regulations that we have, folks who have flood insurance get actually a discounted rate because of the management that we do and the reporting that we do. And so I don't know if it's every year, but every couple of years our assistant city engineer works with the National Flood Insurance Program and documents all the things that we do, and we get a discount. And we have to make some more changes in order to kind of stay in compliance and retain that National Flood Insurance Program. All right, so I'm just going to kind of move through this. So this has been happening for a long time. And back in 2009, the Federal Emergency Management Agency was sued by NMFS, the National Marine Fisheries Service. And the claim was that FEMA should have been, I think, consulting on impacts, floodplain impacts to the endangered species list and actual species and their habitat. And so they worked through that somehow. I'm not really sure what happened in between 2009 and 2016, but in 2016 NMFS issued this biological opinion. And so within that opinion, there was just the list of species that we should be looking at when we're doing floodplain development. So they continued working through this and eventually got to, I think, a settlement is how we came to today. And so then in July, we were told that cities and counties in Oregon, this only applies in Oregon, have to take these short-term pre-implementation compliance measures. And they are called pre-implementation because FEMA is still going through an environmental impact study right now. And it's possible that by the time they're done in 2026, we may have to change some of these measures again. So that's a little bit of the background of what brought us to today. So what they have, so FEMA's implementing this program kind of based on the settlement that they came to with NMFS and I guess through that biological opinion. Okay, bye. Sorry, got distracted. So they gave cities and counties 3 options. One was to adopt a model floodplain ordinance that considers impacts to the endangered species habitat and requires mitigation to a no net loss standard. 2 was to review individual permits through this permit by permit process which actually looks like they're calling it a mitigation assessment. So looking at how a development can mitigate for any habitat loss, if there is any. And then third was to prohibit all new development, which I thought was interesting because we can't do that. Trying to reserve some of my editorial comments. So anyway, we can't just do that. If you just kind of think about the development of cities and towns in general, over time, they will have developed along rivers and places where you have water navigation, where you can have boats bringing in product and taking it out, and that's where your economies are going to develop. So we can't, there's already development there. We can't just prohibit all new development on private property. What we're doing is, what a lot of cities are doing is we're starting with this permit by permit approach. And in the meantime, we're gonna work towards adopting a model code. The FEMA put together a model floodplain ordinance that would comply with the biological opinion. And so we've been looking at that, and we'll try to get that done by July of 2025. We were originally told, and when I say we, I'm talking about all the cities and counties in Oregon, we were originally told that we had to have this adopted by December 1st. And that's just not how land use works in Oregon. You can't tell local governments in July that they have to adopt a brand new ordinance by December 1st. So a lot of us are going through this permit by permit approach and then looking at the model floodplain, looking at the ordinance. So what is no net loss? That's kind of the big piece of this, and it's basically negative impacts to one or more key floodplain functions, and the developer has to mitigate against those. The priority is to avoid any impact and then minimize any impact. And then when those things can't be done, then they're looking at how do they mitigate for impacts to the floodplain. And so they've developed these three proxies. So floodplain function is floodplain storage, water quality, and vegetation. And so the proxy is undeveloped space, pervious surfaces, and trees for each of those three things. Some of this we kind of do already. So floodplain storage is really, in the floodplain right now, we have something called balanced cut and fill. So you can't just fill in an area in the floodplain, because if the water comes in, it's going to push it onto other people's property. So you have to balance that out. And it can be balanced, from what I understand, it can be balanced throughout the floodplain. So if you needed to fill on one property, you could cut in another property as long as the overall volume is kept the same. So we do that. We do have, pervious surface and impervious surface kind of requirements, and we look at that already. And we also do a lot around vegetation, but this will be a little bit different. So that's basically what no net loss means, is how, if the development comes in and impacts the storage, the water quality, the vegetation, how are they going to mitigate against it? So the goal of these mitigation assessments are to describe the current site conditions, describe the project and any impacts it has to the floodplain functions within that special flood hazard area, and then identifying the mitigation that will achieve the no net loss. The mitigation assessment has to be prepared by a qualified professional. And right now, a definition that FEMA has given for a qualified professional is somebody with an education in either wildlife or fisheries biology, and then they have a certain number of years practicing. I think it's like 4 years or something like that. So the code amendments that we're proposing are very simple at this point, because part of the reason why we're doing this is that it's our understanding, we've been advised by our land use attorney, that we can't just tell somebody you have to go do this new permit by permit approach. It has to actually be codified. So the language that we're putting in is basically just that, basically just saying you have to comply with these new federal rules. So we're adding this language in the purpose and findings section about the natural and beneficial values served by floodplains. I think this piece might be the more important piece here, is that if you get a development permit, it doesn't mean that we're trying to give ourselves, the city, a little bit of releasing some of that liability by saying if you get a development permit, you developers still have to comply with federal regulations. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're complying, including the Endangered Species Act. And so then this is the piece that basically is just saying if you're going to develop in the floodplain, you have to do this mitigation assessment that complies with the 2016 National Marine Fisheries Biological Opinion No Net Loss Standards. And that's the extent that we're proposing right now. So we took that to Planning Commission just last week, I believe. And then we're headed to City Commission later this month. Then at the same time, like I said, we'll start working on the model code. I guess there's still some question out there a little bit. Tillamook County has joined, I think, a group, and they're trying to push back on these rules. And so they're trying to, I don't know if sue is the right word, but they're trying to appeal these rules in the right court. I think they tried it before, and it wasn't like the right place for them to be doing it. So they're still trying to push back on that. I thought Lake Oswego was going to adopt the model ordinance already, and they got pretty far down the road and then decided to slow it down a little bit. So I think there's still some hesitation out there about what could come about from this. But part of me feels like we have to kind of keep just moving forward as if it's going to happen, so we don't come out of compliance, and we'll adjust as things move along. So that's what we're working on with this, is trying to, once we do the model code, or once we take a look at the model code, and that was the other piece I was going to tell you, is I don't know how much leeway we have with the model code, if we can just take pieces, or if we have to take it in its entirety and just adopt it, which would not be great. So that's what we'll be working on, and you might be hearing more from me about this.
I think this is my baby. I've been pounding the drum on this since it first came out. I don't know, it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 mayors. I've been complaining about the issue. If you're going to adopt FEMA's map, why doesn't FEMA get the map right? I live in this floodplain. I bought my house in 97. It did not flood in 96. I've had a survey done on my home. I am 5 feet above the 100-year floodplain. But if you look at this map, I'm in the flood zone. Kenema didn't flood in 96. All of my neighbors, I'm part of what we call the Kenema Club. Mm-hmm. We are neighbors who have actually bought a piece of property that we hold in tandem. And this just really, it's just not right. You should get the map right. This map doesn't show it. I have looked at actual FEMA maps, and at those perhaps have been changed since the last time I looked at them. But at that time, West Lynn had a higher flood zone than Oregon City. And we all know that water floods, you know, the tilt. So I think you need to get the maps right. I mean, if you're going to hold FEMA there. And if you look at the flood plain, someone back in DC, oh, here's a river, it all flooded. But what they don't know is that there's that big drain called the falls. So, and the levels should be the same in West Lynn as they are in Oregon City too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll have to ask maybe Josh, our assistant city engineer, a little bit more about that. They do have some pretty detailed elevations that he showed us, and so it does show the falls. So I mean, the people that drew up the maps are well aware of the falls. I'm not certain what has happened with your specific property or why it should or shouldn't be in it. There was a process that's been put on hold during this this whole project called, you used to be able to get something called, it was either a LOMAR or a CLOMAR or something like that, but you could get a letter of map revision. So you would go through FEMA and say, look, here's, like you did, here's my survey that says I'm above the base flood elevation, I'm not in the floodplain, and then they would give you this letter that basically says, okay, yes, you're no longer in it, but they put all those on hold during this process.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have.
Okay.
Carla also has her hand raised too.
Would there be a problem with us waiting for any further action until that lawsuit is settled or decided?
It's a good question. I think the risk that I'm aware of is they can pull us out of the National Flood Insurance Program if we don't comply. So we could, I think an option would be if we continued administering these permit by permit options, which puts a lot of onus on the developer to go through this mitigation assessment rather than adopting the model ordinance. That may be a way to go about it, is not adopt a new code right away and just continue with this, kind of one-off development.
And of course, we're all concerned about the cost of housing, and this simply adds more cost for the developer to develop property, and a significant additional cost with the surveys that he has to go through.
Yeah, it adds cost, and if I'm putting on my land use attorney hat, I don't know that it's clear and objective either, which is our big piece of housing criteria, so.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I noticed that it's interesting to me personally that they always refer to the 1996 flood levels. Mm-hmm. And I was personally involved in the 1963 floods here in Oregon City that were about 3 or 4 feet higher than the 1996 floods. I was in the Oregon National Guard unit. We were activated because of the floods. People were looting the Oregon City Shopping Center in boats. That's why they called us. That's why they called us up.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting little factoid.
Carla?
My question is I know the county right now, I'm speaking not as a planning commissioner, but as a citizen involvement committee. It sounds like the county has decided to fight this. I'm just kind of curious as a resident, what the situation was with county at the time it was presented to the planning commission. And wasn't it an option that the city was interested in joining the county in this fight rather than complying, and what the reasoning was behind the city and wanting to take the approach that they did in presenting to the planning commission, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, it's Tillamook County, and the coastal communities are much more heavily impacted than more inland communities.
I heard Clackamas County is actually wanting to combat this as well. Is that true or not true?
I have no idea. The person I've spoke to and know about is from Tillamook County. So I don't know where Clackamas County sits with it.
I I would be interested in knowing, because, I mean, obviously, we're under Clackamas County. I would want to be supportive, you know, in joining Clackamas County. You know, I mean, just as a resident speaking here, you know, to have that as an option. I don't know, obviously, the city understands, you know, legal counsel better than I do on all the reasoning, obviously, but it would be an interesting approach to look at it that way, because obviously, as it was presented, things can change at the federal level. Obviously, the fee of this is not going anywhere productive as far as we know of, other than just charging a fee, and it doesn't actually do anything productive environmentally. I'd be kind of curious if the county is taking a proactive approach to actually fight this, if there's something that possibly Oregon City would want to join as well. So just out of curiosity, it would be something interesting to entertain.
Yeah, I can ask. I'll have to find out. I haven't heard of anybody else trying to bring a lawsuit against these other than Tillamook County. I know they were working with some, I think, environmental attorneys out of Seattle, actually. So we weren't ever really presented with an option to join a lawsuit. Otherwise, it would have been a discussion for the city commission to decide. But I can look into, I can find out if Clackamas County has joined something.
Where Clackamas County's position is, because, you know, obviously we're in Clackamas County. It'd be interesting what our county, not that, I mean, Oregon City is its own entity, but it'd be interesting because obviously the whole FEMA, in terms of it's obviously not going anywhere productive. And it just, like Bob said, it's a fee that just makes housing more expensive, and the fee's not going anywhere productive. So thank you. I'd appreciate if you could look into that.
Dennis?
I'd be curious, how many residents currently live within this area that's been designated? I mean, are those people, are they at this point informed about what's impending, or I think there'd be a concerted effort to let them in on this?
Your mic, Dennis.
Oh, sorry. Okay, the number of people that live in that area?
I don't know that off the top of my head. We did send out a notice to all of the property owners within the floodplain. And then I think we may have even noticed folks who were within 300 feet of the floodplain as well. So they were given notice that we were making these amendments. And we haven't heard from that many folks, really. I think we heard from one person, but I'd have to look into the number of people who live in the floodplain.
And the last part would be, how many currently have flood insurance?
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Would that be a factor in going forward? I mean, is there going to be incentives for assisting people that fall within that plane? Is there going to be some way of like giving them relief? Or is this a part of any of this discussion?
So no, there isn't any discussion about providing relief to folks who require flood insurance, but that's the reason why we go through the exercise we do with FEMA, is to get insurance rates lowered. And so what I understand, if we don't go through this particular exercise, then there won't be the option for insurance at all. But if we continue to document all the work that we do, folks who already have flood insurance will continue to receive a discount.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Josh?
Oh, thank you. So what is FEMA's authority to even rule-make, just based on the insurance?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I believe, is that it's the flood insurance program, so that if we don't comply, then we would be pulled out of that.
But that's, the flood insurance program is just a reduction in some rates or something because of these mitigation factors? Is that the idea?
I don't know how to answer that exactly. I don't know what all is encompassed in the flood insurance program. So, for example, if I purchase flood insurance on my home through my insurance provider, State Farm. I don't know if they're the ones reimbursing me or if it's FEMA that's reimbursing me. I don't really know exactly how that works, but the piece that I do know is that there's a reduction in that rate for what we do now. So I don't have all the details on how it goes together.
It'd be interesting to find out what that delta is, if it's even worth it to be going through that to jump through their hoops.
Oh, 6%. It's about 6% that you're, no one reimburses you, you're just not charged. They give you a discount. So 6% on a couple $1,000. I don't have flood insurance. My lender, when I had a lender, didn't require it after my survey because I'm not in the flood zone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so my hot button, so sorry. Anyone else have a question? Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
I appreciate your patience with these topics.
I know, you're the messenger, I know.
You get all the fun ones.
I've had a lot of fun ones lately, yes.
And we do have one comment form from Donna Larson. So we'll give you time, if you can state your name and for the record.
I can. Hi, I am Donna Larson. I am the chair of Caulfield. Thank you for having me back again today. And just very quickly, Sarah, thank you for doing our postcards and our signs.
Happy to
They were fabulous. So I almost feel like we need to stand up and stretch or do something to clear the air after all that. I want your happy faces, please. I have 3 little points I want to make. I want to check what is the appetite with all of you, and of course your people, so you'll have to take it back. I recently learned that Oregon City on September 11th has something called Patriot Day. And it's a gathering. I'm not sure where it is. I've forgotten now. But I'd never heard of it. I didn't know. I would have gone, but I didn't know. Is there an appetite for a Patriot Day parade citywide? Just curious. You don't have to answer me now, but that's my vision. I would love to see if we can pull together, because I can't do it by myself, but I'd love to see if we can put together a parade committee. And if it's too soon or too late to do something for September 11th this year, next year is the 250th anniversary of our nation. And I think that would be fabulous.
Fabulous.
To think about.
Isn't the Patriot deal, isn't that a gathering on the Arch Bridge or something?
Yeah, it was specifically related, I think it was joint with our neighboring city, West Lynn, and it was in memorial of 9/11, I believe. Yeah.
So it's...
That's as much as I know about it.
Okay, see, I didn't even know all of that, but I was thinking we could, I don't know.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea.
Okay, well, I don't know what the next step is. I'll throw it off to you guys, and then maybe we can, I don't know the next step. How do we put wheels on this thing?
And Julian was just here, but she does downtown. So this would be a citywide event. Do we have a citywide coordinator, Adam? Is there someone who does a citywide coordinating of events for something like this? Hannah?
I can answer that.
Okay,
So
okay.
we do have an events coordinator, a rental and events coordinator, Taylor Miller, but I think that would be, there's specific funding set aside. We're entering into the budget season. I know that they're having conversations about how they're allocating funds to each one of all of the events that the city of Oregon City puts on, for example, concerts in the park, movies in the park, the 4th of July event. So if this would be a request for city funding to go towards an event, that would have to go through the budget planning process. Adam, do you have any other perspective on that?
We used to have a teddy bear parade. Do we still have that?
And that's run in collaboration with Public Works aids in that parade, but they aren't the sole contributors to that. It's a Lions Club. Yeah, thanks.
It's the Lions Club.
Or Optimus. Lions or Optimus?
One of the, but like the Public Works is a collaborator in that and being able to close off the streets and provide some of the vehicles that are featured in that parade.
Yeah, matter of fact, that's on May 3rd.
That.
May 3rd this year.
Yes, Teddy Bear Parade.
Okay. All right, well, I'll think about what my next step might be. I don't know right now. I'll have to think about it. Anybody excited about trying to do a Patriot Day type parade citywide? Or taking it to your members?
I'd go for it.
I do too. I think that's a great thing. Yeah, and especially for the 200th, we ought to be doing something.
Do you think it's too aggressive to even consider doing something for this year? Should we make our goal be for 2026?
I think so. I think it's soon. We've been, oh gosh, they're doing the budget thing, and we were kind of, CIC took item 2, the city commission, about giving funds for our retiring animal dogs, or service dogs. And we were kind of shut down from that because it wasn't a budget committee. It seemed like the perfect time to do that because they had retiring a dog had just passed away, there's a new dog, everyone was there, but the mayor just shut us down, so.
I have an update for you on that later.
Huh?
I have an update for you on that later.
Okay, good. So I think this year, go for it, but I think it's probably a little too soon.
Okay, maybe I can just email you two and we'll just kind of brainstorm and see.
Okay.
Where we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 2, very quickly, this is just to plant a seed with you so you all know. Oregon City High School students need 80 hours of volunteer community service before they graduate. So if your neighborhood has any projects coming up, if you need some extra pair of hands, remember to go to the high school because those kids have to have it. And then just a request, if anybody would like to join me, I'm starting a graffiti removal team to take the graffiti off and out of Oregon City. So if you want to take it to your members, our first meeting will be probably the 3rd week of February. I've been working in tandem with Officer Todd Kennedy from Oregon City Police Department Code Enforcement. He has been just a gem. I won't go into all the detail, but I've been working with him for a year and reporting things, and anything that was in his jurisdiction, man, on it, it was gone. But we have ODOT property, we have utility property, and we have Clackamas County. And it sits and it sits and it sits. And my own thought is, the longer that stuff sits up there, the people that did it, they think they win. And that makes me angry. So I want it off and gone immediately. So I said, look, why don't we just form, a citizen activist, whatever the right word is, committee, teach us your ways that you want to have this stuff removed, give us your products, and we'll take care of it. We'll document it before and after, we'll do all the reporting, so da-da-da-da-da. So bless his heart, because what was happening is he would report it to them, but nobody talks to each other. You guys, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. State doesn't talk to county, doesn't talk to city, doesn't. And it's like, oh, this is a bottleneck. We've got to fix it. So Officer Todd Kennedy, big shout out to him. He fixed it. We have ODOT, Clackamas County, and the city all coming in the room. And I said, can we please have the utility? He said, no, it's just one thing at a time. So, but we will have those 3. So if anybody in your groups would like to join us, please email me. I'll send you the date when it gets confirmed. And we'll rid this place of graffiti.
Awesome.
Yes.
One spray paint. And I'm just going to say, never mind. Personal opinion, I'll shut up. Thank you.
Thank you very
Donna.
much. Thank you. Anyone else had a public comment that didn't fill out a card? Okay, moving on. Approval of the minutes for January 6, 2025.
Move to approve. Oops, sorry, move to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Staff liaison, February staff report.
Is that what's next already?
You're up.
I'm going to read off here instead of scrolling down. Trail news, last updates were sent out to our contractor this morning. So next week, it'll go into print and then be sent out to all of the residents within Oregon City by next week. So keep your eye out in your mailbox for that. The next deadline for trail news content is going to be April 14th. So if there any neighborhood associations that want to do any specific type of advertising. I know in the past, Elyville Neighborhood Association did a little shout out in regard to their ice cream social that they were having, making sure to advertise that date, because I know a lot of the neighborhood associations have those conducted on the weekends versus their normal general meetings on the weekdays. So I'm making sure that you have plenty of time to think, do some brainstorming if you want anything specifically published in the summer edition of Trail News.
And that might be a good time for Caulfield to put in a little shout out about people getting together for removing the graffiti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's through Caulfield Neighborhood Association,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And will you be who's up and coming, getting ready to go almost or something? Yeah. Can work around it.
Yes. The other thing that I wanted to bring to the CIC's attention is the 2025 If I Were Mayor contest. This is a contest that the City of Oregon City put on last year where 4th through 12th graders can be able to enter a chance to kind of give their perspective on what they would do if they were the mayor of Oregon City. This is also a statewide contest that's held by the Oregon Mayors Association. We participate as a local city. The entries for Oregon City are due on March 30th. Again, it's for 4th through 12th graders. There are certain categories. The younger kids do a poster contest, the middle school students do an essay, and then the high school students enter into multimedia presentation. But if you know any youth who might be interested in participating in that, contestant winners will be judged by the mayor and the Youth Advisory Commission, and they'll be awarded at an upcoming city commission meeting within the spring. And they also have a chance to win up to $100. If they win first prize within the city competition, they move on to the state competition, and they can win up to $500, I think, was for the first place winners in each category. Last year, the City of Oregon City had a student, Brittany Gil-Rosales, who won second place statewide, and I believe she won $300. So that was pretty cool. Anyways, if you need flyer distribution for that, I'd be happy to send that information out in a separate email to the CIC so they could help get that word out. Clackamas Fire District, the Siren newsletter is attached. Your chair, Linda, requested that I get an update in regard to the old Blue Heron paper mill fire. So I have a statement from Clackamas Fire that I will be reading for you. The update that I'm going to first read is from Friday, January 31st, and then I got some highlights from Clackamas Fire this morning in regard to an update today. In the early morning hours of January 30th, Clackamas Fire responded to a fire in one of the buildings on the site of the old Blue Heron paper mill. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Canby Fire, Portland Fire and Rescue, and Scappoose Fire provided assistance controlling the fire spread. Unified command was established between Clackamas Fire, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Roan, owners of the property, to coordinate the response effort. The spread of the fire was controlled early Thursday afternoon, preventing it from spreading to adjacent buildings on the site complex. Firefighters were unable to enter the building due to lack of structural integrity, and the unified commanders determined the safest course of action is to demolish the structure. The Department of Environmental Quality personnel on site stated that there were no environmental hazards from the ash or the runoff. Air quality sensors deployed in the vicinity detected no contamination. By Thursday afternoon, Clackamas Fire had the fire spread under control. The cause of the ignition is under investigation. Starting Friday, January 31st, crew members remained available as heavy equipment began debris removal. And that cleanup is anticipated to take up to a couple weeks. While the scene has been declared under control, passerbys may still see occasional flare-ups and continuous smoke from the structure. The public is urged.
Sorry, it's the mayor.
It's okay. That's a reasonable excuse. The public is urged not to call 911 or news tip lines about visible flames as they are being monitored by on-site personnel. Observers are also asked to maintain a safe distance from the site. As you all know by now, Highway 99 East has reopened. The railway is operating normally. You can continue monitoring progress on Clackamas Fire's Facebook and the City of Oregon City's social media as well. Here's the update that I received from today, just a couple of highlights from Clackamas Fire. They have discontinued firefighting operations at this point. The property has been turned back over to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. The tribe will be demolishing the structures, and they have already begun to do so. They are using a company called Elder Demolition, who will be on site over the next couple of weeks. Again, that demolition is going to take a handful of weeks to be able to complete. Clearly, there is still some fire activity on scene, which is being monitored full-time, and Clackamas Fire crews are always at the ready to respond if something should warrant it. Again, they are heavily urging for no calls to 911 or news tip lines regarding the scene. Their Clackamas County Department of Communications has been inundated with calls and resources are tapped. So if you can do anything to your community, let them know that yes, there are still active fire spots at the site. They are being monitored. Please do not call 911.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, the Siren newsletter is attached. Other updates that I have are in regard to Bob LaSalle requested that there's updates on the residential mailing list. I had to go through a deep dive to figure out, how those residential mailing lists get updated. What I discovered, because I retrieved the residential mailing list from our public records management system, which is Oregon Records Management Solutions, realized that it gets automatically updated through statistics and data from our GIS staff, but they're not specifically uploading those updates. It just automatically gets generated, so it's not exactly known when those residential mailing address lists increase or decrease. It's not like they're manually going in and entering that data. It just automatically gets updated. So what I can do moving forward is be able to provide, just like I do with the email subscribers, I can do a monthly update to the residential mailing list, and that can be updated within the CIC budget list as well, if that's something that the CIC deems fit.
Do you mean that nobody knows how they're updated?
They are updated based off of an automatically generated system that GIS has. It's not that they don't know how it's being updated, it's that it's automatically being updated through their systems. It's not an individual person who's going in and updating those documents.
So I wonder where they get the information on the new addresses.
From GIS, from our geographical information systems through the City of Oregon City.
But I mean, how does GIS get it?
My guess is from tax lot information that comes in, but again, it isn't clear on how exactly that information gets generated automatically. I know that there's information that's retrieved from GIS through tax lot information through the county, but they aren't the ones immediately uploading that information onto the Oregon Records Management System. The City of Oregon City knows exactly how many residential mailing addresses are being added or removed from the city, but how that information gets onto ORMS is automatically generated. Does that make sense?
No. But I'll accept that.
Okay. So moving forward, does the CIC want to be receiving updates on the number of addresses within those residential mailing lists?
Do we need to for accounting?
I think that is up to you. I sat down with our finance department director, and he indicated that there's a fluctuation. I think the highest was $50 from, I believe that it was Park Place Neighborhood Association. So there was a fluctuation, and that's up to the CIC to decide on how they want to.
I personally don't necessarily think we need to update the, maybe annually updating the budget, at that point in time. But I don't see any reason it needs to get done monthly or any more often than that. I mean, we have the money we have to work with, so it's kind of is what it is.
Well, if I was in the Caulfield neighborhood in a position of responsibility, I would be looking at the number of residences, say, 4 years ago, compared to the current number, because there should be several hundred more since those huge apartment complexes have been built.
Are they filled, the apartment complexes? I just drove by a smaller one, I think would be in Elyville today. They just had so for rent, they just looked empty.
But these aren't based on people living there. These are based on it being a address.
Address, okay.
Yeah. So it's not based on the amount of residents that are there.
So
It's
they're
based
just
on
being
a
mailed
physical address.
to an address where no one's ever going to get the mail?
Sure. I mean, eventually somebody will. If it's priced right.
So moving forward, I will be sure to provide an update to the CIC before our next budgeting session, which will be in June.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Aside from that, there's also the budget that's attached. I want to make sure that everybody takes note that Hazel Grove and South End Neighborhood Association were reduced to 1 postcard each, and Caulfield was extended to 6 postcards throughout the end of the fiscal year, which will end in June 2025, at the end of June. Please note that if all of the neighborhood associations continue to spend all of their funding for their allocated postcards, that the CIC will be at a deficit of $1,023.72. Keeping that in mind, we still have the overall fiscal budget, which we're not within the 10%. But if that is the case, I want to remind the CIC again of the conversation that I've had with upper management, and I think that there would be no issues with having that deficit covered. Yeah.
Yep. Just like people.
Any questions on the budget? Okay. Then I think that's all from my end. Yeah. Except for the next general business.
Spring Forward Community Resource Fair.
Oh, let me check in the comments on Zoom. Sorry, Dee Dee, I didn't see your comment earlier. This is for Donna. Dee Dee says that I would like to contact her for high school volunteer for Oregon City Parks Foundation. We can sign off for community service as well. I would be happy to pass Donna's information along to Dee Dee. Sorry about that. The Spring Forward Community Resource Fair, the CIC indicated last meeting that they would be interested in submitting an application. I have not seen one come through for the CIC, so I would suggest that you nominate one individual to be able to submit an online application. I'd be happy, whoever that individual is, to send that form on to them. Applications are due on February 7th, so you still have until Friday. If any other neighborhood associations want to move forward separately on tabling their own booth at the event, I would encourage them to put in their application before Friday, February 7th. Friday, February 7th is the last day to be able to put in your application, so you still have until Friday.
And remind us again what this is. This is a Spring Forward community event. Where is it being held at? And
It's going to be on Saturday, March 8th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It'll be located within the Pioneer Community Center. And it's been held in the past. The reason that it was initially started is because of a proclamation that the mayor signed, I think back in 2018, if not earlier, for a monarch pledge to the monarch butterflies, in which the city needed to host an event where native pollinator seeds were being dispersed. And since then, the city has kind of taken it on to be a resource fair for families, all the way from youth to seniors, to be able to come and get resources related to their community. Last year, the city booths were the city of Oregon City as a whole, just general resources as far as volunteer opportunities, the city commission goals, open board and committee positions. The library was there, and Parks and Recreation was represented, but this year we're hoping to be able to extend it out to larger city resources as well as community resources. So the PD will be present. Public Works will have a booth in regard to water quality within the city of Oregon City. Yeah.
Does anybody have any plans of what we could do with this? Like a national night out? We just put up our little booth or signs. Anybody have any ideas?
That's basically what we did.
Okay. So.
And I have all of those resources in my office available to you. And I think the map is.
It's either in the neighborhood office or.
Or it's in mine, yeah. I think it's in mine.
So why don't you email me the application and I'll fill it out, and then at our next meeting we'll take volunteers for people to be there?
I would nominate our secretary
All right. That sounds like a better idea.
to submit the application. Thank you, Bob.
I will second that.
Oh, boy, he's going to get even with me, I can tell.
Just you wait.
Here comes that bus.
Would you like me to send all of the general information about the event out to the CIC again in an email? Would that be helpful and informative?
Yes, I have a mind like a sieve. I just went.
I understand.
No.
Okay. I will send you that application, Dennis, and I will send all CIC members general information about the event.
And by the way, I attended the pollinators workshop last weekend.
Oh, good.
It was very informative.
I'm sure Dee Dee and Carla would be happy to know that, because I know that I know Dee Dee is a part of the Oregon City Parks Foundation. I think Carla is as well.
Yeah, it was a good event. It was very worthwhile, well attended, and the guy was a hugely knowledgeable speaker that ran the thing. So
Xerxes will be, well, aside from the city departments, we're still going through applications, but the CIC is a city board and committee, and their application will be taken seriously moving forward.
Okay. Roundtable. Tim Gofflin.
Thank you. Last month, our meeting, we had our emergency preparedness presentation, well-attended, excellent presentation by Clackamas Fire and also the Water Consortium, Clackamas Water Consortium. Had excellent results. A lot of people responding. A lot of people are starting their own little groups now in the neighborhood to get prepared, do it together, kind of develop programs, but a lot of really good information to prepare people for even the simplest as an ice storm or to as large as an earthquake. So it was excellent, very well presented, very well done. This meeting, we will be having our steering committee Thursday, and we'll be hearing two developers that are looking at one, a multifamily dwelling across from Dairy Queen, and also a redevelopment of the Oregon City Retirement Home, which we've been looking very forward to for a very long time. So that's going to be hopefully turned into a 50-bed retirement center, completely remodeled and redone. So we're looking very forward to that. The website went online and had excellent results so far. We're getting a lot of great comments on it, and also a lot of people communicating over it now. So everything's tied into it. So anybody sends an email, there goes to me. So I've been getting a lot of emails, which is great. A lot of people from development world are talking to us as well. So that's all I have. Anything, Denise? Ms. Beasley?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that would be it then.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
Who were the folks that were behind the emergency prep workshop?
Who were Clackamas Fire. And I give
Was it their idea?
It was our idea. We asked them to come, and there is one special person that a captain that will come and do the presentation. She's excellent. And then Clackamas River Water, which we heard last month here, she also came and spoke specifically about water. So combined, they were really powerful. It was really an excellent presentation from both of them. I can get you the names if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can send them to you, Hannah.
Yeah,
and you can.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Dennis, Kanema?
I have some good news. We have some friends in Park Place, and this last weekend, were able to, because one of them is on the library board, and we were given a tour of the library and the new floor. And so I think, as I understand, it's a Brazilian hardwood, and it's quite a feat to have gone through that whole process, and they're happy that it's completed. And I believe that would mean we could have our meeting in the facilities. So I'm just sharing that with those who may not know. Yeah. Thanks.
And just for information, I've already, I've reserved 3 months, so you can do it now.
Thank you. Bob, Park Place?
We had elections for new CIC members. I'm continuing to be a CIC member. Steve Van Heverbeek and his wife will be moving out of town probably, so we elected Nick Dirkman to be our other CIC rep. We'll, of course, wait for the mayor to make the appointments. Last week, I went to the Oregon City Business Alliance luncheon, and according to our city manager, Tony Conkle, who gave quite a long presentation, it's very interesting. Everything is alive and well in Oregon City.
I have a question for you, Bob. The CIC terms are 2 years. So if Park Place Neighborhood Association, since Steve is going to be moving out, just like Shelley asked to step down, if there is a different CIC member that your neighborhood association wants to nominate, I will need to open up the application process to make sure that Nick fills that out. And then if you can provide me any meeting minutes or any type of notation from your secretary to be able to document that your neighborhood association nominated that individual, then I will provide that information to the mayor. I think I have Nick's email. Because does he?
Send it to me.
Okay.
I meet with Nick and a group of other old fogies every Friday
I've heard about that.
for coffee and sometimes breakfast. And just so you all know, at that meeting, we meet at 10 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, we have all the problems in the entire world solved.
Good.
Nice.
Of course, by noon, it's all screwed up again, but we give it our best.
Yeah, I'll be sure to send that application out as soon as it opens, because we'll have to reopen it. And then if you can send any type of meeting minutes or secretary notation of the vote that was taken, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll have our secretary send that to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Josh?
Let's see, last month we had, was the house, Oxford House. They were, the gentleman who spoke there, he was great, gave us a lot of information about how the Oxford houses work, how they're kind of regionally set up, and big volunteer sort of organization and all that. pretty neat deal to learn and understand about. So that was awesome. You were talking about the canine retirement
Yes,
deal.
yes.
So in the Chiefs Advisory Committee, we actually had this discussion a couple weeks ago, and a few of us are going to start working on creating a foundation
Fundraiser,
to,
I know.
yeah, fundraise and do that. So
Maybe that's something that we can do as, sorry, just interrupt here, there's brain farts. At our CIC, maybe if we can do that and, or with, and part with them and have a table for donations. We did that at National Night Out. Kanema did that for National Night Out when we did raise the funds to Bronze the Boots.
sure.
And very successful, got people aware of it. We sold T-shirts, but we just had donations and talking about it. So,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, we don't have nothing's created yet or
Okay.
anything like that, but
That might be a nice place to kick
but-
that off.
it could be. That might be a little quick
Little-
for how fast that's moving, but
Okay.
yeah, good
Very
idea.
good, very
Yeah.
good. All right.
Yeah, other than that, we have a steering committee meeting tomorrow night, and that's it.
Anything else, Sarah?
Well, I was just going to tag on a little bit about the Oxford House. The young man that spoke to us, and for anybody who's not familiar with what Oxford House is, it's a place where people who are trying to get their lives back together after drug, alcohol, whatever abuse, substance abuse, I don't know what the umbrella term is, but anyway, so this young man had been one of the people affected by such things. He got his life together, and then now he works as part of the Oxford House structure. They have chapters, and he's in an elevated position where he looks, takes care of, kind of shepherds a lot of different of these houses where young people, not young, it doesn't have to be young, but people who are struggling with addiction, and their life has fallen apart, and they need support like this, and they're self-regulated. They'll ask for a urine analysis, drug test, anytime they need to, and it's just a really wonderful unsung system in our society, and I just wanted to explain a little more about it in case any of you might be interested in hosting somebody to speak about it. It's a cool program. That's it.
And is it Wayne?
Dwayne.
Dwayne.
Wayne.
Dwayne, okay.
Yeah, I was not aware of this part of the.
Oh, that's why I didn't start with you. I thought we'll just go around, okay? I'll give you a break.
Sure, to briefly synopsize what happened at our last Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association. We had the two gentlemen that spoke here a month ago come, but in addition to them, we also had all the 5 major players from the other organizations that are going to be represented by the 3-story structure on 15th, just behind, between Providence and the Carts on 14th. So we got an extensive outlay of what's going to be going on for the unhoused folks in our community, including, showers, medications, any kind of medical stuff. They need cuts cleaned up, psychiatric services, evaluations, if it's necessary for them to be offloaded, if they have some police stuff to deal with at the courthouse, they'll be dealt with there as well. And they're going to have a meeting, sort of queuing up behind the facility, so out of sight of folks going by, so it won't be an eyesore to the community. But I think the most exciting takeaway would probably be getting my father's heart out of a residential neighborhood and down into, more of a place away from, the normal tax-paying citizens that were maybe fearful of some of the folks that are using that place. And the question was raised about where folks are going to end up after they close, because it's basically going to be like a 10 to 3:30 services, and then after that, okay, so where do they go? And as always, the bone of contention is overnight, is where the bed's going to be. And it sounds like a lot of them are going to be going probably Multnomah County at this point. But it's not written in stone, but they have, however, put together, I believe the figure was 12 million from grant money and other donations. So it's happening over at the old Miller's Fiberglass. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's definitely happening. And there were some heated tensions, some folks that came and, some NIMBYism, not wanted in my neighborhood. But there was also, it was pointed out there was public comment for the last couple of years, and, people didn't attend there and voice their concerns. Ground has been broken. This thing's happening. My own advice, coming from Southeast Portland and dealing with a major camp and eventually moving out here. As a result, it's just educate ourselves and be proactive, on this issue going forward. Because it's, Oregon is the number one mecca for unhoused people of the 50 states.
I know, build it and they will come. Yeah.
Well, that's one way to look at it, yeah. They're coming from all over.
I know they are.
And, the only mistake is to turn a blind eye. You got to know what's going on and be proactive moving forward to be in front of it. Unlike my experience in Southeast Portland was, because it can get away from you pretty fast. But there's two really strong sides to the issue. So I just say, let's keep our eyes open moving forward and let's talk it out at every step of the way so we know what's going on. And that's it.
Is there anyone online left? Denise?
I think Carla's online too.
Carla?
Yeah, Elyville has a steering committee meeting next week, and then, we're going to plan general meetings for spring-like events. I haven't gotten around to it because we're just starting to kind of get back together. Usually January is a really dead month, and so we just decided to kick off our meetings in March. So that is the plan. So we're having a steering meeting next Tuesday, and nothing new. We have a lot of, it looks like a lot of lots in our neighborhood being subdivided. So it looks like a lot of infills kind of coming in, and I'm seeing a lot of projects kind of presenting our way, and, a lot of affordable housing being created on Molalla. It'd be interesting to look at some concepts of, in the future, some ideas, because with all these parking that, we're discussing on green parking, it'd be interesting to look at some concepts on making Molalla look better in the future, other than just infill, make it look better and possibly look at businesses long-term or something. But anyways, we're just hanging on. So there we are.
Thank you. Adam?
Yes. So a few things. First, I loved the comment about a potential parade, and I hope that you stick with that. The one thing I would say is I think being careful with the vibes of a parade versus the emotions that come with a day like 9/11, which is why I might suggest looking instead to 4th of July, which in 2026 we have the 250th year celebration, as was already noted. And as you guys know, that was getting the 4th of July celebration back was something that I have been working hard to do, and I thought it was a great event. And so my sense right now is that every year we continue to do it, we can continue building upon it beyond just a concert in the park. And so I would really love to have more conversations about that. Thank you, Josh, for the update about the canines. This has been a conversation that we've been having as a commission, and I appreciate the CIC and Jackie for bringing it to our attention. I think just providing the questions and concerns that we have a commission are several, which is what do we cut in order to do this? So that's always a hard conversation when we're talking about budgeting. The other one is if we were to provide this, how much of it would be taxed? We've talked to our finance people, and we've been informed that it could potentially be a taxable benefit if it were something to come from the city. So how much of that would be taken away in the process of that? And then lastly, just I think the bigger questions over if you have a medical decision to make about a dog that's very expensive and can extend the life by 1 year for a dog who's clearly in pain, who makes the final decision about that? Is that the police chief? Is that the owner? So this sounds like a very easy thing, and it's a very emotional thing, but there are a lot of policy questions that come into play in this, and so I'm glad to hear that there are other parallel conversations about how we can at least do something. So thank you for that. And then the last thing I will say is we have our biennial goal setting retreat on Friday and Saturday. So Friday starting at 4 or 5, and then Saturday going all day. So anyone is free to attend. It's at Gregory Forum, which is at Clackamas Community College, and this is where we're going to discuss as a commission our priorities for the next 2 years, which in turn will guide the creation of the next 2-year budget. So please feel free to come out and make your voices heard. I will tell you, for me personally coming into this, my 2 big priorities, and it's funny because Carla actually brought it up, is economic activity along the Molalla corridor. I think that we've done great on Main Street. I think we've done great in other places in Oregon City, but one of the main through lines of our city is Molalla, and I think that's one area where I think a lot of people would like to see more than just housing going in. So that, and then also what do we do about our parks, our deferred maintenance, and also not only backfilling deferred maintenance, but actually investing in new things that our city can enjoy, and figuring out ways that we can do that without overburdening our ratepayers and taxpayers as well. So those will be my 2 priorities going into this, and I would of course love to hear your thoughts, but for now, thank you.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to add or say? Any final thoughts? Bob?
I would just, in regard to the funding for the police dogs retirement here, the city in the expiring budget now had $55 million in contingency funds. And I think that $15,000 a year for the dog's retirement is a mere pittance to that.
I agree with that, but I also think that's an argument that can be made for everything that we would like to see come out of the budget.
That's true, but the dogs are ones that I'm interested in.
I appreciate that, Bob. And the CIC, right?
Anybody else? Well, we will meet here March 3rd. Thank you. Ending, over.